There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carbary. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the leadership series of B2B Growth. My name is James with Sweetfish Media, and we are joined today by Travis Davis. He is the CEO of Point in Time Software. Travis, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, James?
I'm fantastic. Travis, I'm really excited to chat with you about talking about 6 keys to leading better meetings. This is actually a topic I'm really passionate about after reading a book by Kim Scott called Radical Candor, kind of completely overhauled how we do meetings here at Sweetfish. So I'm excited to dive into this with you, Travis. But before we do that, can you explain to our listeners just a little bit about Point in Time and what you guys are up to over there?
Yeah, so Point in Time, we provide software add-on to Salesforce.com called Strategy Mapper, which is used for account management, opportunity planning, and meeting execution. And we also have a mobile app called Meeting Mapper that is meetings, execution, putting people around the table where they're sitting, very critical, log your miles, expenses, all in one app. It's just really for productivity around how to conduct effective meetings to get the most out of them, since they are so important and sometimes very difficult to get to.
So you're definitely the man to be talking about meeting effective. We're talking offline. You had mentioned 6 specific things that our listeners need to be thinking about if they're trying to lead better meetings. The first point that you touched on, Travis, was the agenda. Can you elaborate on the importance to go into it and how we can leverage the agenda to really start having more effective meetings?
Yeah, I think you have to nail down exactly what you want to discuss in a timeline in a meeting. You want to have a defined time of the meeting and what you want to discuss. And sometimes if you can't get a clear agenda, then what's the goal and what are the objectives to support that goal of the meeting, so everybody's in sync before the meeting even starts, so they can have any add-in or objections or anything they want to be able to add to it before you get in the meeting.
I love it. And so around that, have you found that there's any meeting links that works best? I've heard people talk about, trying to squeeze things into very short meetings. Other people just kind of default into hour-long meetings. When it comes to setting the agenda, I'm assuming that kind of determining the meeting length is part of that process. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it really depends on what type of meeting it is. Is it an internal meeting? Is it if I'm a seller and I'm selling into somebody? It really kind of dictates that length, but what I want to be able to do is maximize the time, especially when I'm meeting with a customer, because those meetings are so difficult to get sometimes. And I want to maximize their time so they can make a conscious decision and really kind of clearly articulate what we do or what you do in a meeting very fast.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. So this next point that I want to talk about, Travis, is having the right people in the meeting. Is this something that you see a lot of your customers struggling with? They just want to kind of invite everybody into the meeting, or why is this something that you think our listeners need to really be mindful of?
Yeah, I think it's just really important to have the right people in the meeting, people that can make the decisions, or people that can at least make a decision in proxy, or have some very deep understanding of what you want to discuss in the meeting. Sometimes you get people in the meeting that really are out of the loop, and then they'll just start adding to the conversation and really just taking away from the main point of the meeting. So it's critical. If it's only 2 people need to be in the meeting, then just have 2 people. But it's very critical to have the right people that can make a decision, maybe right there.
Yeah. I find myself struggling with this because I want inclusive and I want to include everybody in it. But I think the downside to having that kind of approach is actually leads us into the third point that you mentioned. You talk about trying to keep the off-topic conversations to a minimum. And I think that it seems to me, at least, is that when you don't have the right people in the meetings, it tends to create a lot of off-topic conversations because you're either trying to get that person up to speed, to your point earlier, or other things happen when the right people aren't in that meeting that can veer it off topic. Can you speak to that concept of making sure that the entire conversation stays on point?
Yeah. Again, now we're all falling back to the first two items, right? The agenda and who's in the meeting. Now we're having that good conversation because you want to, again, if you have a clear goal in that meeting, you need to at least meet that goal. And when you have people with maybe sidebar conversations, that takes away from the main conversation. That's why it's critical that in your meeting room, do you need a blackboard, right? Do you have a projector? What do you need in that meeting to be successful, to be able to keep the conversations on topic, right? And, free flow of thought is great as long as they're staying on the topic. Now, I'm not saying that in a meeting, you don't want somebody goes off topic, you go, you know what? Let's park that and we'll get back to that in another meeting or maybe offline. So that you don't want to stifle creativity or thought, but you at least want to be able to, keep something on topic, or people won't want to meet with you again.
Yep,
because they're just wasting their time.
Right. All right. This next point, Travis, is that you want to have a scribe, somebody that's taking notes in the meeting. Talk to us about this one.
Yeah, I am terrible at taking notes. I will eventually start doodling on a piece of paper. So that's one reason why we invented Meeting Mapper, because it kind of keeps you on your toes. But they need to take the notes. They need to be concise, because you need to send those notes out after the meeting, so people can say, "Oh, we did talk about that. And this is what this is what we talked about. This is what I discussed. This is what I need to do." So a scribe is very important to memorialize what happened in those meetings. And again, somebody come back and say, "I didn't say that," or I didn't agree to that. It's very critical. It don't have to be a dissertation. It just has to be clear, concise bullet points and just some good notes.
I love it. And so coming out of these meetings, your fifth point is that you want to have action items. I mean, it makes sense that you want to come out of a meeting and actually know, okay, what's going to happen as a result here. Talk to us about action items. Are those typically, I guess, they're determined in the meeting, and then the scribe and get them sent out to everybody that needs to, that was a part of the meeting?
Yeah. So, what did people agree to do to be able to fulfill the goal of that meeting? And, we use our own product. So we're able to do those action items in the meeting and send them out immediately. So we're not having to wait, get back to the office or whatever. So we're sending those out immediately, because then people can, when it's fresh on their mind, they can act on them quicker. And you don't want them to get stale. And that's what typically happens, because people are going in a million directions, right? Especially in today's environment, when you've got multiple decision makers in the room, it's really hard to get one person to make a decisions committee. So they get back, they lose focus. So if they don't understand what they've got to do, they're, kind of agree to it. So just make sure they understand it. And when does it got to be done? Right? What is it?
Yep.
And when does it have to be done? And who do you got to notify?
I love it. All right. This last one, Travis, is follow up, how this plays into a really effective meeting.
Yeah. So we don't like to follow up. Again, those action items are good. The notes are fantastic. Let's say that, you're in a meeting and somebody starts drawing on a whiteboard. The first thing in your mind was, I'd love to have taken a picture of that, right? And they start erasing it, and then boom. So, take images in the picture. We like to say there's more to meetings than just taking notes, right? It's the facial expressions, it's their stance, it's their role, it's the notes, it's the images, it's the action items. You encompass this all to have a really effective meeting. So when people meet the next time, you're moving the ball forward, right? You're always leaning forward and not trying to rehash what you already talked about. And those follow-up items, make sure, because they can take that with them in the next meeting to ensure you stay on task.
I love it. I love it. Travis, this has been super helpful. Again, having an agenda, having the right people in the meeting, trying to keep the off topic. And if you have an agenda and you've got the right people in the meeting, it's likely that that's going to be pretty easy. Making sure that you've got some sort of ability to take notes, whether you're using Meeting Mapper or somebody is in the meeting taking those notes, noting those action items and the follow-up items. Travis, this has been fantastic, sharing these thoughts with us. If there's somebody listening to this, they want to stay connected with you, they want to learn more about Point in Time or Meeting Mapper, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
LinkedIn, Travis Davis on LinkedIn, or you can reach me at Travis D as in dog at point, POINT, letter N, time, TIME.com, pointintime.com, or you can even go to meetingmapper.com.
I love it.
So we're out there. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your listeners and any questions on meetings or effectiveness of the meetings or how to conduct them. We'd love to be able to talk to them.
I love it. Thank you so much, Travis.
Well, thank you, James.
Again.
Thank you, James. Have a great day.
You too.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.